So, hey guys, today we're talking about floodgates, and specifically how floodgates could be more interesting than the way they are as of currently. So, right now, if we look at, for example, skill drain, I can tell you why skill drain is completely lame, right? So, the idea behind if I'm playing skill drain, right, would be that whatever floodgate effect that I'm going to throw into my deck. So, with example of skill drain, this will negate the effects of all face-up monsters while they're face-up on the field, but their effects can still be activated. So, whatever I'm playing, I'm going to just choose something that can activate with a skill drain on the field, or a strategy that can function with skill drain on the field, knowing full well that my opponent could not do anything under skill drain, which is why I'd be playing it. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother playing. I wouldn't bother playing this at all, and I would just play my strategy normally, which I think is lame. So the more, well, it wouldn't be that much more interesting, but yeah, the more interesting utilization of skill drain would be to bypass some terrible limitations on your cards. So in this case, let's go with let's see, what was it called again? This archetype, it was like mole something, not malice. Right, malefic. So if we have malefic truth dragon, we have all these dumb conditions, like if a malefic monster you control, except spectral zone this card from your hand or group, not that effect. There can only be one malefic monster on the field. Negate that effect. If there's no face-up field spell card on the field, destroy this card. Negate that effect also. If this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. Don't need that effect anyways. 5k, 5k beater. So yeah, that'd be the idea, right? So we would put like 5k guy with a bad effect and be able to attack with it, and that's a more interesting usage of skill drain, or to bypass some sort of negative effect with one of our floodgates. So for example, with rivalry, an interesting utilization of rivalry, I think, would be like just to prevent yourself from being kaiju'd. So for example, let's say I'm playing Ignister, and I draw a fat arrival on the board, right? Then this arrival can normally be kaiju, but no, I flip rivalry. Now I am Cyberus locked, and now you can't give me a kaiju because there's no Cyberus kaiju. So for example, those are kind of interesting, but more often than not, with rivalry, what most people would end up doing is we would be playing just some monotype deck. It doesn't really matter what deck it is necessarily, but we throw in rivalry, and well, let's just assume the meta is not playing monotype decks. Maybe they're playing hybrids or something like that. Like for example, some Fiendsmith slop, and you just get cooked by rivalry because you like normal summoned or special summoned Terratop, which is a machine, and then there's basically no machines in your deck aside from Takatomberg, so you can put two useless level 3 guys on the field, essentially, and you're locked out of the game. And it's GG, because your opponent will just destroy all monsters you control and then attack you for game or whatever on the following turn. So, yeah. When we use floodgates like this, I think it's lame. But if we want to be interesting with it, there's also this idea, for example. So with Sky Striker cards, it's basically just this card exactly. If I can find it. Struggling. Aha. Mecha Modules. Multi-roll. So with multi-roll here, normally your cards would be banished when they leave the field after they get set by modules, right? Or multi-roll. But if you were to pair this with what was it called again? It was like something wall. I'll figure it out. Let's see. Imperial Iron Wall. Neither player can banish cards. So if we have Imperial Iron Wall, This prevents our cards from being banished, which means that they go to the graveyard normally. So every time we would activate a Sky Striker card, it would then go to the graveyard and be able to be reset by the multi-roll. And that's like a pretty simple idea, but it's much more interesting. And there were periods of time for sure where there weren't any decks that banished, and you could still play this and it'd be kind of neat, right? There's also the idea of um, if we use the effect of Lord of the Heavenly Prison, but like if I could actually spell, Lord of the Heavenly Prison can set any spell or trap from your deck. So if you were to set Imperial Iron Wall with Lord of the Heavenly Prison, this actually doesn't get banished because you can't banish cards anymore with Imperial Iron Wall. So with the conjunction of this, it allows you to just search any spells or traps you want with Lord of the Heavenly Prison. Simply because, banishing cards is no longer possible. And then boom, this sets cards that won't be banished. So it just sets spells or traps at this point, which helps to bypass the sort of negative effect of Lord of the Heavenly Prison here, which I think is pretty cool, at least somewhat. So I got to thinking, and I just thought about this for a while, and how you would really enable these effects would be pretty simple. We just have cards that only floodgate yourself, but why don't we have those? So something like, for example, this was pretty disgusting. If we were to compare, well, not compare, if we were to combine this aspect with Rongo Miniad, it would be really disgusting. So let's see, Rongo Miniad. So the thing about Rongo Miniad, for some reason, this detaches during your opponent's end phase for effect. So if you just make it so you cannot activate monster effects, Rongo Miniad would never lose material. So in this case, here's an idea. All right. So we have number 86, Heroic Champion, Rongo Miniad, yeah? But we're playing... Which one was it? We're playing Dominus Purge. So if you ever activate something that I can Dominus Purge, I will no longer be able to activate the effects of Dark Water and Fire Monsters for the rest of this duel, including mandatory effects. So in this case, Heroic Champion Rongo Miniad, I will never be able to activate its effect to deattach. But I will still be able to activate monster effects and such. Which is kind of trippy, kind of dumb, but this kind of interaction is kind of interesting, except when you tie this to Rongo Miniad. So just remove Rongo Miniad out of the equation here, and it could be pretty cool. For a self-floodgating effect, anyways, as far as that goes. Baguska, if I recall correctly, does not start a chain, right? Does it? Once per turn during your standby phase, detach one material from this card, if you cannot destroy it. I believe this happens even under skill drain. So this is like just a thing that happens. I don't really know how to describe it, but this isn't an effect, actually. This is like a condition, like an upkeep kind of. Same with like the Quakey Meru cards, I believe. They have that type of thing as well. Where we have the during each of your end phases, destroy this card unless you do whatever this says. So, kinda neat. And I mean, floodgating yourself, I think, could enable some of these somewhat interesting-ish interactions. But I mean, being conditional, I think, is kind of important as well. And how you access this type of effect would be important also. So I think like Lord of the Heavenly Prison, setting Imperial Iron Wall is pretty fine. I don't think there's any particular issues with that one, per se. But then, when we look at Rongo Miniad, oh yeah, that's definitely a problem, right? So, yeah, I can't think of every single use case at the moment, but floodgating yourself for an advantage of some sort, I think is pretty cool. And also, the idea of floodgating yourself to utilize some sort of powerful effects as well would not be too bad. I don't remember exactly what card it was, but I remember there is a illusion monster with a very, well, relatively powerful effect with a massive, floodgate to yourself, I guess. Here we go. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one illusion monster in your graveyard, except Master Tao the Chanter, special summon in defense position. Also, you cannot special summon from the graveyard for the rest of this turn, except for illusion monsters. So if we had an effect like this, but like, I'm thinking something along the lines of maybe special summon a card from the graveyard. You're able to do this, like, I don't know, maybe once per turn. But for the rest of this duel, you cannot activate cards in the graveyard or something. That would be, like, hefty. Or you cannot activate monster cards except for monster effects on field for the rest of the duel or something like that. But, like, tie a good effect into it. Kind of like with the Morganite cards, I guess. More of this would be interesting, I'm thinking. Where you're given, like, something fairly useful, but you just lose the ability to do something else. And maybe this affects your deck building, or maybe it locks off part of your deck, or just locks off options for what you can actually play in your deck, which I think is still a little bit interesting. Like, for example, with Time Tearing Morganite, you can have no downsides with the cannot activate monster effects in the hand part by running only the Dominus traps and Imperm for hand traps, and running no monster hand traps. That's one way you could play Time Tearing Morganite. Or you can simply just give up your monsters and still play them. And a deck that would do this would be like Runic, I guess, where they would probably still want to play like Ash Blossom, Maxi, whatever. But they'll still also want to play Time Tearing Morganite because it's pretty decent, I guess. So this type of idea, I think, is pretty interesting. Like, just imagine a very powerful boss monster where you put all of your eggs in one basket here and you can totally be punished. For example, we might have an effect like just I don't know, just a fairly strong boss monster in general. That's fairly hard to out. Like, maybe it can't be tributed and stuff, and has some like powerful removal effects and some other things. But as the condition of it will remove all of your other monsters on the field or something, and also you cannot special summon any monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the duel, or it has some effect like banish all of your banish your entire hand plus extra deck face down, or something crazy like that. I think that would be interesting in its own sort of way. I mean, like, there's probably more context that would be needed and such to make cards like this, but that was an interesting idea at least. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.